Hello and welcome to Matchup Plus Plus, the 6 show that teaches you matchups
That's right.
and how to do very awkward intros because that's just how we roll here. That's all right. You gotta,
That's what we're about.
yeah. So this week I am joined by Tom, as you can all see very nicely there.
Hello.
Tom's beautiful face. But yeah, we're going to be talking this week about Orcs, Death Guard, and Adeptus Sororitas. So as we usually do, let's just get straight into it. And let me just no. This is one of those moments where you just don't understand how streaming works, right? There we go. I got it in the end. Right, cool.
We are cooking. Paint
God,
Celestine's in. What a surprise.
So professional. Right, okay. So, as said, talking about Orcs, Death Guard, and Adeptus Sororitas, we're going to start off with Orcs today.
Wow.
So, Orcs performs best against... just for clarification as well, these stats are taken with not this last weekend taken into context. So they're 1 week out of date. It's just limitations on when you can make spreadsheets and such. It's just how that goes sometimes. So, yeah, Orcs. Their best matchups. We got Necrons. We got 59%. We've got Astra Militarum at 60%, and we got Tyranids at 54%. Then perform worst against Death Guard, 23%.
Wow.
Space Marines, 40%, and Custodies, 25%. Now, Orcs are a pretty popular faction of 5% play rate. So most of these games, even like the Death Guard one here we've got, that's like 40 games played. So that's not like a outlier stat.
No.
Just to clarify. But yeah, the overall win rate is 48%, and they have 2 event wins. What are you thinking, Tom? What's your initial reaction to that one?
I think there's a lot of stuff here that makes sense. I think we know Orcs are a sort of high tempo, get in your face kind of army, and they have a lot of volume of attacks, which is going to go through Necrons, and is also going to mean Necrons get bodied off the bits of the board they want to be on. They can obviously stage very aggressively in transports, and then they've got good reach, which I think would do for Astra Militarum in terms of just getting all over them very quickly and jumping out and bodying them. And Tyranids obviously very fragile, often lots of bodies for Tyranids, and they'll just get run over by sheer volume. I think there's a running theme with 2, and indeed the 2 worst against, where Custodians and Death Guard are armies that love something that's going to run at them, right? They both love that. They both pack a lot of fight phase control, a lot of debuffing. They have access to -1 damage in combat, which hurts Orcs a lot. So both those armies have the ideal toolkit for messing up Orcs, and also the fact that Orcs want to run at them really serves them up and gives them the kind of opportunities in the game that those 2 armies tend to want. Space Marines, it's just sheer volume of fire, and I think good artillery. Space Marines have always been very good at demeching and then just blasting Orcs off the board, and obviously Orcs really hate anything with a 2-up save and access to -1 damage or -1 AP, because that really hurts their output. So Space Marines have that as well. So I think the matchups looks very much as you would expect from where I'm standing.
Yeah, I mean, they're good against the factions that don't like it when people are close to them, and they're bad against the factions that do like it when people are close to them.
Because that's what Orcs are going to do, right? They're going to get close to you. Like it's not we'll get into it, but it's not an index that packs incredible shooting. Its main strength is in occupying space and taking up the board, and that's always kind of what Orcs like to do.
Yeah, it's a very honest index. I think one of the more honest ones. So yeah, let's just move on to the next one we got here. So the most wanted for Orcs. So we've got Badrock and the Flash Gits.
Yeah.
So we got 3 shots each base, but +1 if you shoot the closest thing. So normally 4. Strength 6, AP 1, damage 2 with sustained 1. Does hit on 5s, but you get full rerolls to hit from Badrock.
Yes, you do.
Once per game, you can give them lethal hits as well, and then you have a 6-inch -1 toughness aura from Badrock, and you can whack all these in a truck and just have. I'm pretty sure it's firing deck 10 on a truck.
It
or
is,
something.
yeah. So you can have them shooting out of a truck.
Yeah, you can just have them all shoot out of a truck. I mean, the firepower that can come out of them is ludicrous. It is the only thing. It is the only thing that has one shot a ghost kill ever for me. And a lot of things have tried, but it's the only thing that's ever actually managed to just straight up kill the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
a very good Overwatch threat too, right? It's a really nasty Overwatch threat.
Yeah, exactly. It really brings something that the Orcs don't otherwise have, which is a way to kill stuff not in melee. Which there is a big difference between, killing stuff through a charge and killing stuff at range. You may think it's just more than 1 inch difference, right? But it is actually a big change in what your ability, what you're able to do. Just stuff like demeching and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's also worth saying this is a unit that actually has, I think, 3 attacks per guy in combat as well. Like, they fight pretty well. They're not bad in melee either. Like,
yeah,
so
the -1 toughness benefit.
They can get stuck in combat if they need to. So they're flexible. They'll roll up a side and lock it down with Overwatch and just bully lighter targets. And again, the kinds of things they struggle into, as you can see from the profile, is -1 damage and or -1 AP. That's when they suddenly drop off in terms of efficiency. Otherwise, incredibly versatile.
Yeah. So next up, we've got the Squighog boys. So they get the T7 and the 5+ Feel No Pain as standard and 3 wounds. And then obviously if you call the War, that gives army wide 5+ invulnerable save. And they have the Arda's Nail strat for -1 to wound.
Yeah,
that makes them
so
hard. Yeah, so hard to put down. Like, they will just tank so much stuff, and then a couple of them will live and make your life a living hell. Especially if you are a monster or a vehicle. Crisis suits say hello. They hate that unit with a passion.
They really do. Yeah, it's ideal for ruining cyclics, isn't it?
Yeah, but again, this is all AP0, AP1 stuff, right? That's going to be a running theme.
That is most of their output, isn't it? Squighog boys are fast and chewy. This book can put a lot of Feel No Pains on the board, and being able to, as you say, being able to pop that -1 to wound in the right place at the right time can just completely ruin the shooting of it on a flank somewhere and roll through.
Yeah, and we go back to the win rates. We look at the ones they're good against: Custodes, Space Marines, and they're bad against. Custodes, Death Guard, Space Marines, all fronting up 2+ armor saves, armor contempt equivalent, like out the wazoo. And then you look at Tyranids, Astra Militarum, and Necrons, and they do not have that. So
as soon as you're hitting lower armor saves, they will just go right through it.
And the last one worth bringing up is the Nobs the War Boss.
Such a good unit.
They have the coveted -1 to wound. That's not the if higher toughness -1 to wound thing that a lot of units have. They have the better version. It's just a flat -1 to wound as long as there's a War Boss in the unit. It's a lot of high strength attacks for very, very little points. I believe it's 3 strength 9 AP1 damage, 2 each.
Yes, I think it's AP2. I think you can have them all with Power Claws, right?
I was thinking of Power Claw, but
I think so. So it's, as you say, it's a lot, and it obviously strength 10 in the War on the charge as well, which gets them to a really important breakpoint for bodying vehicles.
Yeah, and you're looking at sustained hits because of detachment rule.
Exactly
rule.
That. Exactly.
And then you can make that on 5s with a stratagem. You can just get so many more attacks than you think they're going to have.
Yeah, they got a points drop in the last balance pass, and I think that makes them a really punchy, powerful unit.
Yeah, and then the War Boss himself is very strong in the war.
He's great.
He gets double attack, so he's like 8 attacks at strength 10.
Yeah, so I think like to combo with the Nobs and the Badrock and the Flash Kits that we've shouted out, we've got to give the truck a shout out, right?
Yes,
the humble Orc truck.
I didn't want to put the truck on here because even though it is our most wanted, it's like, what's a truck, isn't it? Like,
exactly. Ultimately, it's these things are why you'd bother having them, but it's Orc lists often have 3 to 4, maybe even more trucks in them. They're cheap, they're quite durable, and you can just get up the board and get these things to where they want to be for their go turn.
Yeah, it's it is just a metal box that prevents them from getting hit straight away. But so at that point, we've got the next slide. As I wait and see if Tom is alive. We'll wait a second on that. Hopefully Tom returns. But in the meantime, I'll go through the making the list section here. So this was from one of the top orc players in the UK as of this week. So you got Captain Badrug, we got Mozrog Scrazbad, I think he's called. Two knobs on Smasher Squigs, one with Headwhopper Killchopper and one with Cunning but Brutal. The Killchopper is your standard +1 attack or damage, or that kind of mix. And then the Cunning but Brutal allows you to fall back and charge, or fall back, shoot and charge, I think it might be. It's just a lot of extra added utility. You've got 3 war bosses just on their own. They're in 3 units of knobs. You've got 3 trucks for things to sit in. We've got 10 flash kits for Captain Bagrat to join. 3 units of Gretchen for objective stuff and CP generation. 3 units. Oh, thank you, Pain Celestine. Killchopper is Dev Runes. You're absolutely right. And then 2 units of 5 Stormboys for more objective stuff. So the way these kind of lists tend to play out, I'll just quickly cover that while we wait for Tom to return, is you have the Squighog boys, we have the knobs, we have Mozrog, we have the trucks full of knobs and the flash kits. They're kind of like putting a lot of pressure on the board, moving forward, threatening long charges, or in the case of Captain Badrock's unit, a lot of shooting. Meanwhile, the Gretchen can move up and they can do mission play stuff, and then Stormboys can come down and again come in your deployment zone, do mission play stuff, and just be a general annoyance. But you can see a lot of the common elements there that we've been talking about before. So we got the flash kits, the knobs, Squighog boys. They are consistent appearances in the old Orc book, because one thing the Orc Index doesn't have going for it as a general rule, we're talking to some Orc players, is a lot of internal balance. So there's kind of a very short list of units that you'll tend to see over and over again. And you also can see there's a lot of like spamming triplicates of things here. So that seems to be the case. And then lastly, we've got the tips and traps here. So let's see if we can get Tom back in. There we go. So beware the war. That's a good thing to say. It's activated at the start of a battle round. So if the Orcs player goes second, has to say at the start of the person who went first battle round. Then gives the whole army 5+ invulnerable save. Real painful to deal with, as well as advance in charge. That's again, it's just massively increasing the threat range on the go turn for the Orcs. So a really good thing to try and do is to limit the impact of the go turn for the Orcs, right? You want to make it so that they can't just send everything at you on that war turn, because that's when you're going to start to have a lot of problems with them just charging your whole army off with multiple units of knobs and Squighog boys and whatever else. As we said before, Orcs can struggle into high armor units, so things like Armor of Contempt, 2+ armor save stuff. Against Badrock's unit, if you're sitting in cover, that can help a lot. If you're aggressing into the Orcs, you need to make sure you take into account the likes of Arda's Nails. That's a really strong stratagem, but they also have a fight on death. You need to take it into account as well. Those are the kind of strats that the Orc player can just pull out of his sleeve and just kind of catch you out with and make things go kind of bad for you. Flip a turn or flip an objective or whatever else. And then lastly, the threat range of the war. Again, we're just going back to the war again. The threat range of the war is really long, because if you park your truck up against the wall, you can get out 3 inches from it. So get out from the other side of the wall. So that's 3 inches. You can move 6, say for knob. I think it's for knobs. You can move forward 6. So that's 9 inches you've gone. You're D6 inches, so you can go up to another 6 on your advance. Looking at 15 inches, then you can charge, so you can threaten up to another 12 inches away. That's a very long distance. You're going there with the old with the old with the old orcs. So I'm just going to give it 30 seconds. We're going to the next. We're going to the next faction. Let's see if we can pull Tom back in. So bear me just a second. All right, we're doing it live. This is what can happen when you do live shows, live streams. I guess we're just gonna have to roll with it. Okay, so the next faction we're going to be looking at. We've got confirmation. Tom is on his way. Don't worry, people. You won't have to perm with me for too much longer. Right. The next faction we're going to be talking about is Death Guard. So they have an overall win rate of 51%, a play rate of 5%, and an event win rate of 6 events. Is he back?
Hello.
He's
Hello.
back.
The internet's great, isn't it? Love the internet, especially when it just decides to not be there anymore. Cool. Right, we're going to get up to you, Jack.
I actually kept going without you there, Tom.
Very good. I don't blame you at all. That was the right thing to do.
But is there anything else you want to mention about orcs? I kind of went through the common sort of tips and tricks as well as the common lists that orcs can come out with. But
I think Bewailing the War, as you say, Ardent Nails as a thing on the board that can swing things, and I think they're one of those armies where I think in terms of your overall gameplay, they are going to dominate a good portion of the board for a good chunk of the game. So you need a game plan that recognizes that and can deal with that. I think they're one of those armies where fixed secondaries can be very dangerous because you may not get to the mid board for a couple of turns. So things like cleanse, homers, etc. You might just be too busy fighting for your life. So if a particular orc list gives up kill secondaries, that's great. But otherwise, I think probably cards and shoot and fight your way out. I think those are the big things. And as we've already discussed, just remembering that they really don't like -1 AP. They really don't like -1 damage. And they also hate fight first, so wherever you can apply that, I think that's a big deal. And also remembering that they have 2 CP full fight on death, so trading with orcs, very dangerous game. Be very careful when you're trying to do that. Keep a very close eye on their CP count. Those would be my main tips.
Yeah, I've definitely fallen foul to the picking fixed secondaries against orcs.
Yeah,
it's not ideal.
Yeah, it's a bit like World Eaters. You just know they want 2/3 of the board for the first half of the game, so you have to assume that's what they'll get. Sure, sometimes you go first and they don't get there, but a lot of the time they will.
Assassination can be solid.
It absolutely can. They are one of those armies that does give it up, depending on the build, and bring it down, obviously, depending on the build as well.
Yeah, but the traditional Homer's Cleanse or behind enemy lines is not necessarily what you want to go.
They're just not going to give you that kind of time.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to Death Guard then.
Wonderful, smelly boys. My first 40k army, Death Guard.
Sorry, Death Guard. You're a Death Guard man. So as we said, we got overall win rate 51%, play rate of 5%, and event win rate of 6, which interestingly enough is the highest number of event wins of any faction other than Chaos Space Marines and Eldar.
Very good.
So by a noticeable margin as well. So they perform best against Orcs, as we've already discussed, World Eaters and Tyranids. And then they perform worst against Necrons for 46%.
That's
We've got a Dark Angels 35% and Chaos Knights at 46%.
Okay.
So the ones that stood out to me, I mean, the perform best against makes a lot of sense. We've already talked about the Orcs, World Eaters. We talked about on the World Eater section.
Similar thing, yeah.
If you get close to Death Guard, that's what they want. That's what they want from you. And honestly, Death Guard does have access to a lot of fight first.
Yeah.
With the Putrid Blightspawn, I think it's called.
Foul Blightspawn, that's right.
Foul Blightspawn, there we go. So many adjectives.
Yeah, I know, so many smelly boys in there.
So yeah, they have actually got to fight first. It makes things very difficult for the World Eaters. So and Tyranids, well, almost every other weapon in Death Guard is an anti-infantry gun. So all those sort of mass gargoyle lists, because they have a lot of flamers and stuff like that, all those kind of lists, they're very strong. They're very good at dealing with large amounts of infantry, which not a lot of armies are. So it kind of makes sense for Tyranids to struggle against that, because that's kind of like what they prey on. They're kind of their niche.
Completely.
We talked about before. The perform worst against is a really interesting list.
So I think for Necrons, I guess probably the killer thing is that Death Guard don't have one single kill god activation in their locker, right? They don't have that kind of pick up a whole brick of something. So they might be a little bit vulnerable to getting bogged down and drowned a little bit by Necrons.
I mean, their best combat unit is 15 attacks, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So I think that's potentially what's happening there. Obviously, it's still not a massive difference. 46 isn't disastrous. Dark Angels, that's an interesting one. I mean, I can only assume it's Deathwing Knights doing the Lord's work, right? And just running things over and being too hard to shift with the -1 damage, -1 AP, but I don't know for sure.
As a general rule, I think Death Guard perform quite well against stuff with high armor, because of the -1 save disease.
Yes,
is really, really strong. Because if you put down a Terminator and you put it into a 3+ save, you can have all the cover in the world. He's still not saving on a 2+ anymore, right?
For sure. Which makes this interesting, really. Thinking why Dark Angels do body them so hard.
Exactly.
And then Chaos Knights, I mean, it's just, I think a lot of these Death Guard lists go very heavy on vehicles, and Chaos Knights just absolutely rinse vehicles with good Melter and Carnivores and other things.
Yeah, very low model count armies as well, I think. I tend to find. Like the Death Shrouds only like 3 dudes. What are they called? The Blight Launcher, the indirect pieces.
Yes, Plague Burst Crawler.
Plague Burst Crawlers, there we go. It's on the next slide, don't worry. The Plague Burst Crawlers obviously die very quickly to Melters and stuff like that, so it all makes perfect sense to me. I did get a couple of games of Death Guard in to sort of learn how the army works before we did this one, so...
they're good. They're in an interesting spot right now. I think their toolkit has come into vogue just because of the way the meta has evolved. I think a lot of pressurey, angry, up in your face armies have come to the fore, which in turn Death Guard as the kind of counter to that are now sort of rising up as well.
All right. So most wanted.
Oh, some great units.
We've got the Biologist Putrefier. So his thing, he joins Plague Marines. He gives them lethal hits and critical 5s. He can use a grenade strat for free, even if another unit's already used it. And it gives the unit access to an assault weapon because his grenades have assault. So you can advance and do stuff. So it's all very useful. He's just a really solid...
Great.
This critical 5s is for everything. So if you use the strat for sustained hits, then that will proc on 5s as well. So it's all really strong.
Yeah, really good.
Next we've got Plague Marines. So I don't know if anyone's actually attempted to build a Death Guard list. You can just give every single Plague Marine a special weapon. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, that's what the kit comes with, a ton of nasty weapons, right? And it was always a bit silly, but actually it adds up, especially in this world of free war gear. Plague Marines are absolutely armed to the teeth with stuff.
Yeah, because you can have 2 with you can have 4 with close combat weapons, and then 2 with a heavy weapon and 2 with a special weapon. I think is how it's like meant to be. So it's like designed. But then you can also give the champion a close combat weapon and a special weapon. So they just all get stuff. It's pretty funny.
They really do.
But they also, as I say, they synergize super well with the characters and the strats. Biologist Putrefier, the Foul Blightspawn, that any number of the power armored characters. I think that's like 5 different ones or something like that. They all synergize super well.
The Foul Blightspawn combo is great here, right? Because if you want to go and trade with a small combat unit into Plague Marines, they're going to hit you first, and then that's going to take a huge dent out of you.
Yeah, and you also have the fact that you can have multiple leader units attached to Plague Marines. So you can again get additional synergies there, like combine them, so they're greater than the sum of their parts. They are probably the best damage dealer in the book by virtue of how many special weapons they can get and
for their point,
buffs.
they're incredibly cheap, and just an all-star OC2, good fighters, combo up well with the characters, and you can just chuck them forward some rhinos. So they're really nice.
What you're generally looking at the combo is 10 plague marines, and 5 of them will have great plague weapons. Just 3 attacks, strength 8, AP 2, damage 2.
Yeah,
pretty sure that's what it is.
Yep.
And then so they're all hitting on 4s, but with lethal and sustain on 5s because you'll use the stratagem, and it's sustain 2 if you're on the on an infected objective. So they just do an absolutely ludicrous number of hits for what they are, considering it's just like 5 guys with plague marines. So yeah, they will just chunk stuff, and they do very much punch up on their points. So that they've got additional hit strats, they've got additional AP strats, so they can definitely do a lot of work there.
Exactly.
And then lastly, we have the Plague Burst Crawler. It's an indirect piece. It has quite a nice little rule. It forces battleshot tests on things that it hits with its main weapon.
That's right.
Which is when you have 3 of them, and you just you can take 3 battleshot tests. Even a leadership 6 unit is like odds on to fail that. Yeah. So that's really solid, especially if you're playing against something that's going to pop a really strong stratagem that's going to screw over your Plague Marines in combat, like Custodes or Orcs.
And it can also help with primary play, right? Needing to flip an objective at a key moment.
Exactly, yes. With the way that the book works with infected objectives, sticky objectives, that is really important. And then it's just hard to get rid of.
They're tanky. They're tough.
It's a battle tank. It is toughness 10 with a 2+ armor save and 12 wounds, I think it is. It's just like a little bit, like it's like 1 or 2 wounds more, and like a point of toughness more, like you think it should be. It's just really good. It's just a really solid weapon.
And typically, for the points, with these kinds of lists, you're having to make hard choices because you've got angry melee boys up front, and then you've got those shelling you, and it's just always difficult to decide: am I going to try and clear the tanks and the heavy shooting, or am I going to be able to deal with the guys in front? And it just saturates you in very tough bodies.
It just adds another damage profile, doesn't it?
It does. And as we've seen, good indirect just gives you so much play in this current game. Being able to put opponents on a timer, being able to whittle things away, and battle shocking things is obviously extremely useful.
Yeah. Okay. Special mention for the most wanted for the Foul Blight Spawn there.
Yeah, I love the Foul Blight Spawn. He is great.
His ridiculous strength 7 AP1 damage 2 flamer.
Yeah, that's actually the least ridiculous it's been in a whole edition in 9. There were all sorts of crazy things you could do with his flamer, but it's still, it's very good. And obviously you can have him poking out of a rhino, just hosing out the front. That's the nice thing with the Foul Blight Spawn as well. It gives you an Overwatch rhino, which we've seen used to good effect in Thousand Suns as well.
All right. So the list, I have taken this from...
Oh, nice.
Leicester GT.
Okie dokie.
So we've got 3 Biologist Putrefiers. We got a Foul Blight Spawn. We got Chaos Lord and Terminator Armor. A Lord of Contagion with Deadly Pathogen, which is a +1 attack, +1 strength weapon.
Yep.
And then +2 if you're on an infected objective. We got Typhus, 10 Plague Marines with, as we said before, 5 Plague weapons, 2 Blight Launchers, 3 Plasma Guns. 2 units of 5 Plague Marines, 3 Bubotic weapons, 1 Blight Launcher, 2 Plasma Guns. Another 2 units of 5 Plague Marines, the same, but heavy Plague weapons instead of the Bubotic weapons. 3 Rhinos to put all of these Marines in. And then 2 units of 3 Death Shroud Terminators for the Lord of Contagion and the Chaos Lord.
Yeah.
2 Plague Boss Scholars with Energy Cannons, and 1 Plague Boss Scholar with Plague Spitters for holding for home field objective holding, and just some Nurglings to go be mission-y pieces.
Yeah. I mean, this is very nice. I think we've seen a few lists that have experimented with more like go wide gun line Death Guard. I'm not convinced that's playing to their strengths. I like this where it's all about I'm just going to keep shoving very punchy, durable dudes on all of those middle objectives all game, and you simply will not beat me on primary unless you're able to clear me off in time. and it's extremely hard to engage with them in that sense. So yeah, it's a really cool list. Typhus is great, particularly if you fight into stuff and you pick the -1 to your weapon skill, ballistic skill with Typhus. He also gives his unit a -1 to hit, so effectively stuff is coming in and hitting you at basically -2. Absolutely brutal. Makes certain units completely unable to scratch them in combat.
Yeah, Nurglings do the
really
same
nice.
thing.
And Nurglings, exactly. So that's one of the secret bits of tech in here. Obviously, the extra AP is very nice into certain matchups, but this making your weapon skill, ballistic skill worse is absolutely crushing into a whole bunch of armies and puts them in a really vulnerable spot.
Yeah. I mean, just if you're hitting on 4s, all of a sudden you're hitting on 6s, and you
exactly.
you
literally cannot scratch them. You cannot scratch them. So people, this is the kind of the sneaky return of Death Guard durability. It's through the medium of debuffs rather than just raw stat tech on the toughness. They are still tough, but
I prefer actually.
I much prefer. It's clever. I think there's layers to it. I think they're beginning to figure out a cool set of rules for Death Guard, and that's really exciting.
I've always been a real big fan of factions that are like, we're going to drag you down to our level.
Yeah,
rather than
exactly it. And that's how Nurgle should be, right? This kind of, you try and get to grips with them when you find yourself enfeebled and weaker at them, and they've always there should be the army that you dread engaging at close range. That's what they're about. That's their whole lore. The kind of shuffling, inexorable march of doom, and as soon as you get near it, it's over.
Yeah. All right. So tips and tricks here. So infected objectives. Really important that you know how infected objectives work because the detachment rule for for these guys. When they hold an objective in the start of your start or end of a turn, it becomes sticky. And if the opponent takes that objective off you, it remains infected until the start or end of the next turn, which is really important because if you got 5 Plague Marines on an objective and then you charge your Exalted 8-bound on that objective, even though you've taken that objective off of them because you have more OC on it, it's still going to be infected. So it's still going to be giving them the buffs for the for all the stratagems. It's still going to be giving you the -1 toughness and whatever else the disease they have. So it's really important. And then the other thing that infected objectives do that's really frustrating is because you don't control an objective until the start or end of your next turn, you can't do a cleanse on an objective that you take off of Death Guard in the same turn because you don't control it.
Exactly.
You had to think about that one for a second, didn't you?
No, it's just good. It's just powerful.
So it makes fixed objectives a lot more difficult against Death Guard. So because that just takes one away that you can do, and which is one that you would probably want to take because assassination is generally so good against Death Guard because they have so many characters. I wouldn't recommend taking cleanse against Death Guard because it's really hard to score. Next up, we got the objectives, as I mentioned, stronger. Basically, if you fight them on their objectives, Death Guard, they want to sit on the midfield and control those objectives and just sit there and wait for you to come to them. If you want to fight them, that's fine. They've got to fight first. If you don't, they'll just shoot you with all the special weapons they have and indirect. So ultimately, you will have to end up doing something about them on there. They're not going to come to you.
Yeah, that's it. They would just sit on the whole midboard. That's where they're going to be.
Just win the game.
You have to be able to do something about that.
There's a lot of potential for mortal wound output with this army, to the point where it's like Thousand Sun-esque. If you know what you're doing. A lot of the characters just do mortal wounds when they take wounds. The Lord of Contagion, the Chaos Sword and Terminator armor, stuff like that. Typhus obviously does a lot of mortal wounds as well. The grenade stratagem does so many mortal wounds as well.
Again, if you get close with a big hard target, it will get hosed down very aggressively. That's very much how they work.
And then lastly, they got all the character buffs in these units. There's a bunch of different characters. They'll give very powerful buffs, particularly the Plague Marines. And it's a really good idea that you know what each one does when you're setting up your game, basically. Any more? I haven't thought of that, Tom.
No, I think that's the key thing. I think this is, and I mean, they're a bit of an unknown entity at the moment. That's where people are going to fall down into them And it is, it's a brilliant debuffing army that will hurt you a lot if you come in close and requires very significant amounts of respect to deal with.
Yeah, I guess the long and short of it is, if you can shoot them off, shoot them off.
That is always the preference. Yeah, killing them at
Yeah.
range is definitely the preference, without a
Yeah.
doubt. Or anything that ignores modifiers to their characteristics is also very nice. So if you
Also
take, for
very, very
example,
strong.
the Grim Demeanor Hearthguard squad connecting, doesn't care so much about Death Guard because it's ignoring all of the things they're trying to do to worsen their characteristics. So the upgrades like that are extremely important where you can get them.
Yes, a solid meta pick against Death Guard, I would say.
Yeah, completely. So that's a tool you can definitely have. Obviously, they too are just marine bodies, so good artillery is very strong into them. Things like guard artillery, I think, at a distance where they're not going to be being debuffed by all of the changes to their stat lines, are going to give them a hard time. And you also want to make sure that their killer units don't connect and get too close to your important stuff. So you need to be screening out things like the Death Shroud, and the Death Shroud love rapid ingress. They're slow, so they want to drop in via rapid ingress. So control the space with chaff, throw it out, so they can't just deep strike in wherever they want. Make sure they don't get a Death Shroud squad down one side of your or in behind your army. And with the Plague Marines, either contain the Rhino and block where they can go, or get them drawn out and then deal with them once they're on the ground. Because Plague Marines die. Once they're on the ground and you can isolate them, they do die. Where they don't die is in combat
Or in a Rhino.
or in a Rhino. So you need tools for that. But again, popping Rhinos is the name of the game right now, right? There's so many Rhinos around. It's a very, very important part of playing the game.
All right. And yeah,
Team's getting excited. Here we go.
yes. So let's put on to the last faction we have set up for today, the Adeptus Sororitas. So, as I say, these stats are a little bit lower than what they are now because it's a week out of date, and they did very well this last weekend.
They're in blue.
So we got they perform best against Chaos Space Marines. They're one of the only factions in the game that has a positive win rate against Chaos Space Marines at the moment. So it's worth putting on there. As I said before, I tend not to put Eldar and Chaos Space Marines on these perform best and worst against, because otherwise they'd be on every single one. So it'd be pointless. But in this situation, it's so rare for Chaos Space Marines to have something that they're bad against that is worth putting on here. So a 55% win rate there. We have a 67% win rate into Tau Empire. And we have a 61% win rate in 2000 Suns. In terms of what they don't like, they have a 46% win rate into Orcs, a 31% win rate into Dark Angels, and a 35% win rate into Death Guard.
Okay.
And then their overall win rate is 52. Their play rate, is 2%, and they have 4 event wins, which is the fourth highest of any faction in the game.
It's creeping up, isn't it? Creeping up at the moment, sisters. Yes. So CSM is interesting. I mean, they've got good ways of trading with CSM. If you want the in-depth on this, then we did a show with Vic VJ for State of Play talking about Adeptus Sororitas. I highly recommend checking that out if you want to hear about the CSM matchup in some depth. Tau Empire, I mean, Tau don't love lots and lots of artillery and very durable bricks, and then stuff being able to just make charges on you when it wants to, do they, Jack? That's a bit rough.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that Tau will struggle to deal with in this situation is the Arcliff Gellants.
Exactly.
Because they have a 4-up Feel No Pain, they're just going to shrug off a lot of the damage they take from that big unit. And because Tau can't split fire, they can probably only manage to kill one of those units in a turn.
Yeah, so that's not giving them enough time to deal with everything else, is it?
Yeah, because they won't. If you're just hiding behind a building on UKTC terrain, then there isn't much Tau can do about it without getting into your deployment zone, which is easier said than done. So a lot of the time they will connect, and just through sheer weight of dice, they will take down Crisis Suits and stuff like that because they have a 3-up save.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. Also it's very easy to make long charges with Adeptus Sororitas, particularly on the UKTC.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
FAQ. Your 9-inch charges are 3+3 rollable for sisters, so it's very easy to make those.
Insanely good, and so that suddenly that definitely makes it worse, without a doubt.
Thousand Sun's an interesting one. I'm not that familiar with Thousand Suns.
A lot of anti-psyker in Sisters across some of the keywords, so they can snipe out all of the sorcerers and all the characters very happily in combat and at range. Magnus is just going to die like a little bitch because lots of anti-psyker dev wounds going into him. And I think Exorcists are also, Thousand Suns don't like artillery very much. An Exorcist will just open up things like rhinos and start bullying all of their units, put them on the clock, force them to play aggressively. Then I imagine Arcoflagellants just go in and rinse everything, basically.
So, thinking about this Chaos Space Marine one quickly, do you think that the reason that this win rate is so high is because normally you'll see Chaos Space Marines on the top tables, right?
Yep.
On the top sort of range. So do you think that this is a high win rate because you have very good players at the moment? I'm just playing devil's advocate. They got very good players at the moment on Sisters that are going to have to play against Chaos Space Marines a lot. Yeah,
I think so. And also some of at least two of the current top Sisters players are CSM players who have jumped over briefly for one reason or another. So they know the matchup extremely well as well. So I think there is an element of that.
Because CSM is the faction that the Sisters have played most into.
Yeah, it makes sense. CSM are one of the most common armies out there right now. So, yeah, I think that's very much it. Paint Celestine is saying Sisters have got great fight phase control. Yeah, exactly. So
I was going to cover that in the tips and tricks. A lot of sneaky stuff.
They can blunt some of the melee, which is worth talking about why Orcs, Dark Angels, and Death Guard perhaps do a little bit better. So I think the key things there would be Orcs have lots of fight on death, so they will obviously go in and trade with you regardless, and they have so many units that they can just body you, and they'll go through Arcoflagellants with sheer weight of numbers and attacks. Dark Angels, again, I think the -1 AP Deathwing Nightbrick is quite good at blunting things like Arcoflagellants, and it also tanks most of the kinds of guns Sisters have. Things like Exorcists and Melters, etc. don't really do great into them. Obviously, with Death Guard, what you can do, Death Guard just, I guess, would just be shelling the Crusaders once they're committed. We'll talk about Crusaders in a minute, but if you've got a Plague Burst Mortar, you just kill the Crusaders before you fight into an area, and then obviously that's less of an issue. And lots of mortal wounds and sniping for picking off their characters and other things as well. And I would imagine Sisters' combat output really drops off as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the next one here. So most wanted, as we mentioned before, Exorcists. Do you want to cover this page, Tom? I don't know what.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, the Exorcist is a really good tank. It was one of the data sheets we identified as being crazy when the edition dropped. It's just got a really good anti-tank gun that is. Yeah, extremely effective at picking up enemy vehicles. So 3 of them, just slightly shorter range on them than some of your artillery guns, but they'll just shove forward, start popping rhinos, picking up any kind of enemy artillery, and allowing you to control the board. So yeah, they're really, really strong, really, really good. For Arcoflagellants, yeah, so I mean, 30 of these cost the same as a single brick of Aberrant. And 30 of these nets you 60 wounds with a 4-up Feel No Pain. A single brick of Aberrants nets you 30. So, same cost, double the wounds. Not bad at all. Very nice amount of durability to shove on points. Incredibly undercosted. Lots and lots of attacks. High volume. Can have +1 to wound. No AP on these is the killer thing, right? Not having... That's where they do struggle into some armor, but their main job is as a tar pit and just holding ground and shoving things up anyway.
It's very strange to say how a toughness 3 no armor unit has very high durability for the points.
It's insane, right?
That's just where we are with Sisters and how they work.
Yeah, but and also I think in this current edition and into a lot of the main threats in the game, so much damage gets through. So it's about how much of the damage that gets through are you saving, and in this case, it's 50%. That's not bad, right? Even so that it's a strange one in that sense, but it's definitely very effective, and yeah, they're extremely cheap, definitely too cheap, and they just mean you just shove out this anvil for the enemy army to bounce off of, whilst you kind of cut them up with other units. And then you've got your Battle Sisters, Palatine, Dialogus. There's a sort of trick here. Again, you can hear Vic talk about it on our Sisters State of Play, where you're just going to slap through very high damage melter shots, more or less on a whim. And the Palatine in combat, is very good for precisioning and chopping up enemy characters. So there's a lot of combination play in here. It's a very janky, tricksy index. And it has all the right tools for getting it done in the current metagame.
Yeah. So the list that I've put in is the Big VJ list.
Hey, there he is.
It was too low of a hanging fruit for me not to take that one.
Exactly. Got to do it.
And a lot of lists are starting to look like this one anyway, so I thought it'd be worth taking a look at. So we've got Saint Celestine and a Triumph. We've got Canoness, Palatine with the Blade of Saint Eleanor, which gives you +1 attack and strength, I believe. And every successful wound you have gives you a mortal wound in addition. And if you have precision from Epic Challenge, those do go into the character. That's the word I'm looking for. Then we've got the Dialogius for turning your miracle dice into 6s. We've got 2 units of Battle Sisters with multi-melters, melter guns, and condemned bolt guns for those 1,000 Suns. We've got 3 units of 10 Arcofagellants, 2 units of 2 Crusaders, 5 Seraphims, a Castigator with a battle cannon, 3 Exorcists, an Immolator, and 2 Rhinos.
Yeah, it's a really good list. It spreads the threats really, really wide. The Castigator is just a nice little hard target removal. The Crusaders are in there for tricks, I assume we're going to talk about at the moment. Arcoflagellants run up the board, and you've got your high precision damage. There's some nice tricks. I mean, the thing with Sisters is all the characters can play a sneaky fake trading game where they draw damage out, then they get back up anyway. Celestine's very good for this. And it can cover the board, spread out, and really push you off the objectives. It's extremely strong.
Okay. All right, and I think we're going to go to the last slide because that's probably going to spend most of our time.
Paint Celestine also says no Val in Most Wanted is sad. Paint Celestine, win Coventry GT with Val, and then we'll talk. So we have tips and tricks. Do you want to lay this on us, Jack?
So I think it's really important if you're playing against Sisters to realise that they're probably one of the trickiest armies in the game right now.
Yeah, absolutely they are.
I don't think they have anything that's just like straight out broken tricks like Eldar has had and currently has.
I question that a little bit, but we'll see. Broken's a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah, I think it's just because you pay for it, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity cost here. It's not basically free.
No.
Sure. I think it's really easy to get caught out by Sisters because there's a lot of stratagems that can really screw you over, and the way say the Triumph can work and stuff like that. So the first one is Rejoice the Fallen. If you kill a model in a Battle Sister squad, that Battle Sister squad gets to shoot you back. So if your tank kills 7 Battle Sisters out of a Battle Sister squad, the multi-melter and the melter gun are going to shoot you back. Yeah. And they're only going to use miracle dice for it. And they're going to be 6s automatically because of the Dialogus. And those 6s will be lethal because of the Palatine.
Yep.
All those Big VJ is in the chat, and we have stolen his list shamelessly, so he's just
tier army. Don't worry about them. Yeah, I completely agree. There's absolutely no problems. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Right. So so you'll be really careful what you kill in Sisters. The other thing you need to be there are other units that's really important against as well. For example, if you do take more than Val's unit, all of those Nundums are armed with multi-melters and missile launchers, which you do not want to shoot. If you kill one of those, kill one of those, and then the rest of the unit
back with full rerolls.
You don't want that.
No, you don't.
Then we've got a lot. As it was mentioned before, a lot of combat phase control. They do have +1 to wound. They get it from the detachment rule anyway, but they can have it whenever they want. They have a full fight on death. No 4-up you fight on death. It's just a full fight on death.
Yeah.
And then you also have suffering and sacrifice, which basically, what the strat does is you pick a unit that's in combat with an enemy unit, and then that unit can only hit the unit you have selected if it's an engagement range.
So this is insanely powerful.
Yeah.
Insanely powerful.
Particularly when you combine it with something like heroic intervention.
Yep.
So you charge those 8 bound into something, or the Incarn into something, and then you rapid heroic intervene with your Crusaders, and your Crusaders go in there. Their little 30-point unit, 40-point unit, whatever it is, goes in and it's like, well, you have to attack us now.
Yep.
And then those 10 Arcoflagellants just get to swing and do whatever they want. Because it's effectively, you can protect a lot of units in that sense, because if you multi-charge, even a even a fight first unit, right? Let's take a look at that Plague Marine unit, right? You charge 2 units of Arcoflagellants in there. Well, you're going to take a lot of wounds in return from the Plague with their fights first. Or Khorne Berserkers with the Master of Executions is another good example of a strong fights first unit, or any Custodes unit. You take a lot of wounds in return. So what you can do is, if you charge in, you put in, say, 2 units of Arcoflagellants and or 1 unit of Arcoflagellants, sorry, 2 units of Arcoflagellants, and that's it. One of them, you can say, well, I force you to fight this unit of Arcoflagellants, and then I'm going to put a fight on death on them.
Yeah.
So you're going to kill that unit of Arcoflagellants and not the other one, and they're both going to get to swing at you, even though you have fight first. So they have a lot of ways to screw over a lot of people. If you're not careful, if you really don't know what you're doing or what you're dealing with, they're really going to pull your pants down.
And I think a lot of the time, even if you do, because on certain kinds of terrain where you can just hide all of this away, be on all of the objectives, and say, if you do try and engage with, that's going to happen to you. I'm interested to see what the solutions for a lot of armies are in the case of that. I think it's extremely difficult to deal with.
And then I guess the last one that can be quite annoying is the Light of the Emperor to ignore stat modifiers.
Yeah, not bad, huh?
Yeah, which is quite a nice little trick to pull out of nowhere, especially for playing things like Death Guard, which is what we spoke about before.
Absolutely.
And then Miracle Dice Shenanigans is the last thing I put on the list, because
on top of that, they have Miracle Dice, they have Fate Dice, right? They have a lot of tricks and tools going on here.
Yeah, it's such a huge breadth and width of things that you can do with Miracle Dice. As we said before, UKTC FAQ on Miracle Dice is that if you use Miracle Dice for a roll and then re-roll it, you keep any Miracle Dice you use in the roll. So if you use a charge, use a 6 for one of them, you can keep that on a re-roll.
So
very powerful.
This will reach you, and things dropping down from reserves will reach you. Yeah, you have to play on that basis. It makes things incredibly efficient.
Yeah, it kind of just makes screening all the more important, really.
Yeah.
Yes. So another great point from the chat there. Light of the Emperor. Should you fail a battleshock test, you can use that to, or I guess it's just it basically works like a pass, because it stops your OC.
Your OC doesn't get modified. Yeah, it's extremely useful.
So obviously before you fail it, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to use a stratagem on that unit. But that's I think that's most of what I had in my head. The problem is that for everything that I can think of, there's probably something else that a really good Sisters player is going to think of.
It's the
combination I've not thought of yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge toolkit, an incredible toolkit of an index that I think has found a couple of ways around its predominant challenges, which is simply high toughness. It's got a few ways around that now, and it has enough ways to block and bog down and play the mission regardless anyway. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle this going forward. I think this is one of the indexes that actually has some questionable things going on in it in terms of how it interacts with the rules, but we'll have to see what they do long term. It's only just I think the interesting thing, we think about all three of these armies, they're all having a decent time at the moment. They're all quite fighty, punch, get involved. Very right. What's up?
Okay, we didn't catch any of that, mate. You were completely lagged out, roboting away. So.
Oh no, that's a shame.
There's a lot of really good there, so we didn't catch any of it. I'm sorry.
No,
man.
That's fine. That's fine. So when did I disappear?
Basically from when you start talking there.
Oh, that's a real shame.
So pretty much the whole thing.
Okay. Sisters are very good. Let's see how it all plans out. It's a real shame.
Yeah, I think that the only problem Sisters have ever had in 10th edition is that better factions exist.
Yep. For sure.
For a long time, better factions existed, and then no one played Sisters.
Yeah.
Because really, they haven't changed very much. They got a couple of points drops, but basically stayed the same. I think they've just been. I think they've just been slept on.
If they're left alone in the slate, they'll be even stronger. Because the slate, you assume that the slate comes for their stronger opponents, and then I think they look really good.
Okay. Well, I think that's everything we had to cover today.
Yep.
Tom, thanks for being with me despite
no worries.
the
Sorry, I was only there at times. Thanks for putting up with it and doing a good job as always, Jack. Enjoyed it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. There's a lot of people in here today, more than we usually get for Matchup Plus Plus. I really appreciate it.
See so much excitement with it.
Yeah, really appreciate all the chat, guys. If there's any factions you would like us to cover on future episodes of Matchup Plus Plus, please put them in the comments below and let me know. I want to know what people want to see, and then we can just cover that. We can cover those first and make sure we get all those highly wanted factions out of the way, and then beyond that, like, subscribe, all that YouTube nonsense.
Exactly.
But I think we'll get going because we've got to get out of here before the real podcasters show up and kick us out of the studio.
2 more hours till main show at 8:30, so we'll see you all then.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Bye.